Let's go to Peggy Grande in America. This is astonishing stuff by any standards, with ramifications for us, which I will look at tomorrow. I mentioned last week that two top US generals said they'd advised Biden to keep American troops in Afghanistan. Now, remember, one of them was General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, another General Kenneth McKenzie, the chief of the US Central Command. They both said they had personally recommended that 2,500 troops remain on the ground. Biden argued that not a single person in his circle of advisors, in or out of uniform, pushed back on his plan to withdraw. I should point out that our own Department of Defence, Foreign Affairs and Trade was under the microscope via Senator Penny Wong yesterday at a Senate inquiry. Our bureaucrats were clueless about Australians in Afghanistan who are still there, and I'm coming back to that story tomorrow. But this has serious ramifications for the free world. Two of America's top generals saying they advised the president to keep troops on the ground. The president saying not one single person in his circle of advisors, in or out of uniform, pushed back on his plan to withdraw. Now, first things first, how the hell would Joe Biden know what was said? This is Biden at a vaccine mandate speech in Illinois last week. Look at this.
And the Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm from Pennsylvania. The Illinois president Don Harmon.
What the hell is he talking about? The only connection between Pennsylvania and Ohio is that Ohio is on the western border. But then where Illinois fits into that, about 11 hours and 800 miles away, I have no idea. Listen to this again.
And the Ohio, Pennsylvania, I'm from Pennsylvania. The Illinois president Don Harmon.
They shouldn't let this bloke out of bed. What do you think Russia and China, let alone the Taliban, are saying? Here, the President of the United States here confuses a telephone for television. Listen to this.
You know, if I can digress for just a second, last night I was on the television. I was on the telephone with a person at an emergency hospital ward.
Oh, this is a violation of aged, isn't it? Television, telephone. I suppose in Biden's state of mind, they're all the same. And just imagine if any leader said this.
Let's be clear. When you see headlines and reports of mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs, look at the bigger story.
God help. Mass firings and hundreds of people losing their jobs. There's a bigger story. Well, he's right in a sense. The bigger story is that the West is at serious risk under this bloke's leadership. Let's go to Peggy Grande. Peggy, thank you for your time. Were you able to see those clips? How much longer can this sort of stuff go on?
Well, it's crazy. And talking about the Afghanistan withdrawal, you talked about the generals who were unified in their voice. It's actually worse than that. We learned later that there was something called a letter of dissent that was signed by nearly 24 individuals at the embassy in Kabul and sent to Secretary Blinken at the State Department. We don't know whether the President of the United States saw it or not, but they warned that this collapse would happen and would be imminent. They also said that they disagreed with the president's policy. But President Biden proceeded anyway, circling a date on the calendar for political purposes and refusing to listen to the conditions on the ground, and has put us in this dangerous spot where our allies no longer trust us and may not join us in the next conflict that we engage in, and our enemies aren't fearing us, which has to make right now, Taiwan especially, very nervous.
Absolutely. Well, just let's go to the domestic side first, Peggy. There's a new university poll puts Biden's approval rating at 38%. Now, anything with a 3 in front of it is terminal. And there are midterm congressional elections next year, 2022, a presidential election in 2024. Peggy, how do you see that? I mean, in that poll, 61% said America was on the wrong track. So surely the American people are realising that the military withdrawal from Afghanistan was a disaster.
I'm wondering what the 30-something% see that the rest of us don't. All we see out of this White House is weakness and failure. You know, presidents need to be able to articulate their vision for America. Our Constitution is infused with the idea of American exceptionalism. And America first doesn't mean America only. It means a strong America can help the world. Ronald Reagan talked about peace through strength. Donald Trump talked about making America great again. What does this president see for America America and for the world under his leadership. We know what we see. It's rising crime and falling job numbers. We see COVID vaccine mandates and infringement upon all our liberties and freedoms. This president, not only is he very unpopular, his policies are wildly unpopular. He needs to remember who he serves, and we, the American people and the world who's dependent on American leadership, needs to remind him.
Absolutely. I mean, Biden couldn't remember Scott Morrison's name at the AUKUS virtual press conference. Watch this.
I want to thank that fellow down under. Thank you very much, pal. Appreciate it, Mr. Prime Minister.
See, Peggy, I mean, this bloke's talking about US $5 trillion in new spending. Two New York Times journalists in a new book show that the compromising emails involving Hunter Biden, which were revealed during the presidential election and censored on the internet, were genuine. In other words, Biden Jr. was using his dad's connections in a series of sleazy business deals. When will we know, Peggy, the truth about the Biden son?
Well, we know they will continue to cover it up. And think if it was a Trump child that had been accused of any of these things, I think the story would be very different. You know, we need to let this president continue to fail for his policies and his bad ideas. And we just only hope that his party and all their ideas diminish as quickly as possible.
I agree.
2022 is going to be a rude awakening for the Democrats. They are very unpopular right now, and they're trying to press everything through because they know they're going to lose in 2020.
I just wanted to ask about this Lieutenant Colonel Scheller. I mean, this is an extraordinary world story. He's issued a gag order. He's a lieutenant colonel. The gag order was to prevent him from speaking out against military leadership following the botched troop withdrawal from Afghanistan. He was arrested for, quote, breaking the chain of command. His crime was speaking the truth. He was locked up. He had served 17 years in the army. He expressed views on how the military pulled troops out of Afghanistan, including abandoning Bagram Air Base before the withdrawal was complete. He said the generals, quote, broke the chain of trust and confidence of the American people. Now, as we've said, the generals were saying they told Biden to leave. Scheller was ordered to undergo a mental health evaluation. He said by speaking out, he was walking away from a $2 million pension. He said, everyone is scared that the weight of the system is crushing down on me. But he said, I know something you don't. It is the system that's going to break, not me. Where are we in relation to Lieutenant Colonel Scheller?
Yeah. Well, he knew that he broke good order and discipline, and he broke the chain of command, which are, principles of the military that he knew he was in violation of, and he knew there would be consequences to pay. And we're not saying that there shouldn't be consequences for breaking those policies, but if he's the only one who's being held accountable right now for the chaotic withdrawal of Afghanistan, he wasn't even there. He wasn't even part of it. So where is the responsibility and the accountability from the people who were there? And by the way, where was the same outrage when 4-star generals were speaking out actively against the commander-in-chief when Donald Trump was in the White House? Why were they not held to account for their actions, for them speaking out and undermining the very responsibility of the commander-in-chief?
Yeah, look, Peggy, before you go, I was interested to note the comments of the Republican Brian Mast, M-A-S-T, a US Army veteran, talking about the contradiction between what the top generals have said about the withdrawal and Biden's denial that anyone had told him to keep 2,500 troops on the ground. Brian Mast said, Republican, that the Defence Secretary Lloyd Austin confirmed that, quote, input was received by the president. And Mast said this confirmed that, quote, generals were telling the administration that, no, if you pull out, this is what will happen. Afghanistan could fall. Now, as we know, 13 US service members were killed as a result of the president not listening. But I suppose the significance, Peggy, of Republican Mast's testimony is that he lost both legs in an improvised explosion device which exploded while he was serving in Afghanistan. And he's been critical of the whole show. I mean, do we listen to him or do we listen to the president?
Well, I don't think this president is listening to anybody, and we see the disastrous and dangerous consequences that are happening, not only to our brave men and women who are on the front lines, but to future foreign policy decisions where America is not going to be listened to or trusted. This president is not trustworthy. What he says coming out of the White House, he's either not being told, he's not remembering what he's being told, or he's lying to the American people and the world. All of those are dangerous conclusions.
Good on you. Peggy, lovely to talk to you. We'll talk again next week. Thank you for your time. She does a great job, doesn't she? Peggy Grande. Now, that has significant relevance for us, and there is a big, big story that I'll follow up with tomorrow night about that very issue, soldiers in Afghanistan. But just to give you an insight, yesterday at Senate estimates, Penny Wong questioned all the hierarchy of our military administration. They couldn't answer how many Australians were still in Kabul. They couldn't answer how many applied to leave. They had no information available at all. It's been a disgrace. Then, of course, we've got the Brereton report on top of that. I'll be looking at all of that tomorrow night.